and forcibly taken away by persons suspected to be police officers using two motor vehicles, a Subaru and a Toyota Crown models. The incident occurred in the vicinity of regional headquarters of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations offices in Mombasa town, Mombasa County. Mr. Ntotene's motor vehicle was found abandoned at the gate of Mombasa Primary School and taken by the police to Mombasa Police Station. Up to date, the whereabouts of David Taitumu Ntotene is unknown. The matter was reported to the police by the family and recorded by OB number 13 on the 15th of August on the year 2020 at the Central Police Station, Mombasa. It is notable that his phone was on until 19th of August, where the daughter texted him on the 16th of August in his WhatsApp, and it is on the 19th when the message was read, and then the phone went off. Honorable Speaker, it is on this background that I seek statement from the chairperson of the Committee on Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security to the following. 1, what is the status of investigations into disappearance of Mr. David Ntotene in Mombasa County? 2, what measures are being undertaken by relevant ministry and other agencies to locate and bring back Mr. David Taitumu Ntotene to his family, who have been living in distress and anguish as they look for their loved one? Thank you.
Chair, Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. Honorable Koinange, the Vice Chair. Request to be channeled through the Office of the Leader Majority. Next order.
Order number 8, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 3 of 2019, second reading. Question to be put.
Sorry, Leader Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 44-2A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Wednesday, September 16, 2020, to prioritize business for consideration. Honorable Speaker, on Tuesday, September 22nd, the House Business Committee has prioritized consideration committee of the whole House of the Refugees Bill of 2019. We shall also continue with the second reading of the following bills, should they not be concluded today. The County Wards Equitable Development Bill, Senate Bill number 34 of 2018. The County Statutory Instruments Bill, Senate Bill number 21 of 2018. And the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 24 of 2018. Now, Speaker, the House Business Committee has also prioritized for debate the report of the Public Investments Committee on Special Audit Report on Kenya Bureau of Standards, and any other committee reports that are ready. Honorable Speaker, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 42A5 and 6, I wish to convey that the following cabinet secretaries are scheduled to appear before the departmental committees as follows. The Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and Arid and Semi-Arid Lands will appear before the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on Tuesday, 22nd September 2020, to answer questions from Honorable Bishop Kawira Mwangaza, MP, and Honorable Joseph Kosgei, MP. Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Culture and Heritage will appear before the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism on Tuesday, 22nd September 2020, to answer the question from the Honorable Joseph Tonui. And Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs will appear before the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations on Wednesday, 23rd, 2020, to answer the question from the Honorable Samuel Atandi. And the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife will appear before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on Tuesday, 22nd September 2020 to answer the question from Honorable Danson Mashako and Honorable Kufai Iringo, as well as the Honorable Michael Mushera. And our Speaker, the House Business Committee will convene on Wednesday, 23rd, 2020 to consider business for the coming week. And our Speaker, I now wish to lay this statement on the table of the House.
Very well. Now back to order number 8.
Order number 8, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 3 of 2019, second reading. Question to be put.
Now, members, it looks like many of us may not have heard that there was expanded seating space in the chamber. Maybe the new normal of sitting in the tents seems to have attracted many majority. Or maybe they're operating from, they're still dealing with those other places. Maybe the Sergeant at Arms can check if there are any members who may be relaxing under the tents. Tell them there's adequate space to come into inside the chamber if they still want to participate. Honour members, debate on this bill was concluded, and what remained was over the question to be put, which I hereby do, that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 3 of 2019, be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of Parliament to amend the Public Finance Management Act and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 9, motion. Inquiry into the death of 11 black rhinos after the translocation to the Southern East National Park Sanctuary. Question to be.
Again, honourable members, debate on this motion was concluded, and what remained was the question to put and the proceed to do so, which is that this House adopts a report of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on its inquiry into the death of 11 black rhinos after translocation to the Savo East National Park Sanctuary, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, September 19th, 2019. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next.
Order number 10, motion. Audited financial statements for the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, 4 constituencies.
The Chair of the Special Funds Accounts Committee, Honorable Murongi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the 9th report of the Special Funds Accounts Committee on the audited financial statements for the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for the 12 constituencies in Kiambu County for financial years 2013-14, 2014-15, and 2015-16, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 25th, 2020. Mr. Speaker, actually transformed this country. If you compare what this fund has been able to do and what has been done with other funds, which engage to the constituencies, you realize that this is one of the best funds that has really transformed our constituencies. Mr. Speaker, the key findings that we had, observations, is that there is no standardization of NGCDF projects. Mr. Speaker, we saw that some of the projects, a classroom can cost 600,000 in this area. Another classroom can cost 1 million, the same measurements. So my committee recommended that NGCDF board can invest in quantity surveyors and architects to standardize most of the projects that are done so that we don't have these discrepancies as in projects. Another key point is that we saw in some constituencies implementation of projects and reallocation of funds without getting approval of the NGCDF board. Mr. Speaker, it is also good for the country to note that the members of this House are not the accounting officers of the fund. They are fund account managers who are responsible directly to the NGCDF board. So members of this House just play the oversight role. And it is important the country to know that whatever happens with this fund is not directly responsible to the member of parliament. So I want to exonerate members of this House that even when summoning the fund managers to appear before the committee, it's on the prerogative of the member of parliament either to appear with them or not, but to encourage members at least to come when we are sitting with the fund managers so that also they can know what they are oversighting, the issues raised in their constituencies. But the key people who are responsible directly are the fund account managers. So, Mr. Speaker, that was our recommendation. And then the other one was underutilization of fund administration, police posts, and police stations. In many constituencies, especially Katondo North, Juja, and Thika, we have so many projects meant for security facilities. And this is actually common in almost all the constituencies. Because, when we do public participation, members of parliament do public participation, the communities or members of the public demand to be given police posts, police stations, and then the NGCDF committee goes ahead to construct. But due to lack of, consultation between the district security personnel and the NGCDF committees, they go ahead and construct these very wonderful facilities, but then the Minister of Interior lack police officers or personnel to post to those facilities. So if you move around the constituencies, you might find so many police posts, police stations with no police officers. This is because these were constructed without that consultation. But now there is a regulation that any establishment that needs security personnel, the committee must liaise with the district security team so that they can approve where we need these police stations and police posts. Wananchi, it's very difficult for them to know whether there is that area really needs security personnel or not. So our recommendation was that enough consultations will be made. And then also the NGCDF board to do a survey across the country and come up with, after the adoption of this report, we expect the NGCDF board to come before this House again, maybe during implementation committee, and tell us how many police posts, police stations are all over scattered all over the country, which have no personnel. Another issue that my committee also came up with in these reports is the expenditure approvals by the district accountants. Honorable Speaker, and the constituencies where we come from, there is an officer called a district accountant. And this is the officer who approves all payments made through the projects, NGCDF projects. So in some constituencies, Mr. Speaker, these district accountants, and it is very common in most constituencies, there is a lot of negligence in that office. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we say that those officers, if the NGCDF board cannot have independent officers, then the officers in the district, these district accountants, should really take up their work seriously. Because even when auditors go to the constituencies for the audits, that is 3 months after the expiry of the financial year. When they go to the constituencies, the auditors do not get the documents that they need to do the audits. So all those original documents for payments, which are actually within the custody of the district accountants, they didn't need to be provided on time. And one of our recommendations is that every constituency fund account office or fund account manager's office should have an original file of every project in the constituencies. Because in most cases, these original documents for the projects are within the PMCs, people called project management committees. So our recommendation was that every fund manager must have a complete file of every project. That file should be in the fund account manager's office, so that when the auditors get to the constituencies, the fund managers are able to give them all the documents that they need to do the audits. Because most of the problems we found is that the auditors do not get the documents. They go to the constituencies, spend 3 days, 5 days, 1 week, and then they leave the constituencies without doing their work. Another issue, Mr. Speaker, is that the link between the Office of the Auditor General and the fund account managers, there is a missing link. Because when the Auditor General comes up with a report or with a certificate on a certain financial year, you will find that now, Mr. Speaker, you are doing the audits for 2013-14. You will find that that fund manager did not even attempt to visit the Auditor General's office in the regions so that they can be cleared of the audit queries. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we really advised that should be corrected, and I think it is one of our recommendations, what should be done by the fund managers. Mr. Speaker, another issue as I conclude is about bursary allocations. We saw that some of the checks get stale. Some others, the students, when they move from one school to the other, they don't inform the office. So, Mr. Speaker, we said that it should be well established, the allocation of bursaries, so that it can be streamed, including use of electronic system to wire money to the schools, so that these checks which go stale, which are sent to the schools, they come back. That money should be put to the oversight committees, because you can't do the project, and then after a few months, you go to mark the same project for yourself. So these oversight committees should utilize that money. If this House agrees with me that monitoring and evaluation money should go to the oversight committees, which will be very independent when they go to monitor the projects. Mr. Speaker, I can see my colleague Honorable Boy, and you can do it better than that, because these are the issues that really touch on us. And Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I ask the Honorable from Mboni constituency, Honorable Erastus Kivasu Nzioka, to second the motion.
Nzioka Kivasu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to second this motion on the adoption of the 9th report of the Special Funds Accounts Committee on the audited financial statements for the national government CDF for the 12 constituencies in Kiambu County. Mr. Speaker, I was one of the members who went around the Kiambu and visited about 6 constituencies. And what the chairman has came out from the audit report. And one issue that we realized on the ground is especially on these underutilized police posts, whereby through the CDF constituency fund, at least the administration police posts were constructed, they were commissioned, but they have not been used up to today, posing the question on how was the public participation done and whether there was any consultation with the relevant ministry before they did the construction. This, if checked well with the ministries or done well with the public participation, it will ensure proper utilization of the CDF money. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the bursary issuance, we realize the delays in disbursing these bursaries to beneficiary institutions, as well as non-presentation of the same bursary checks and cancellation of bursary checks, which have led to loss of money which is supposed to have benefited these beneficiaries, and leading to the recommendation that, one, we need the national government CDF to give us guidelines on how we are going to be issuing some of these checks. And being an ICT consultant in the same field, We request also the fast tracking of the ETF so that we can ensure all these bursaries are disbursed well to the relevant institutions to benefit the beneficiaries that are supposed to benefit. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we also observed in the construction of the classes, in the construction of some of these police posts and other buildings, when it comes to standardization, many of the members do not have any standard way of doing the classrooms or some of the buildings, and requesting the need for the national government CDF to ensure they have a standardization, especially on these constructions, and taking into consideration the parameters within the region, and most likely having a quantity surveyor or an architect within the county or within the constituency that is going to ensure costing is done properly and designs are done properly so that we ensure proper use of the CDF money. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with that, I second the adoption of this 9th report. Thank you.
Now, members, I propose a question, which is that this House adopts the 9th report of the Special Funds Accounts Committee on the audited financial statements for the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, NGCDF, for the constituencies in Kiambu County, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 25th, 2020. Looking at the request, the member for Arienda appears to be on top. Is it about this? Member for Angwe, you want to contribute to this? The next one. Member for Mandera East, Hassan.
Honorable Speaker, from the onset, I want to support the report by the board, the chairman. I concur with the findings that they have put. It is important, Mr. Speaker, to note that NGCDF relies heavily on the Ministry of Public Works for designs of different projects, and as a result of that, what the committee has found out is a clear indicator that the board requires to recruit its own technical staff to do these designs. Honorable Speaker, as per the findings, it's important to note also that that different regions have got different geographical locations, different costings, and it is going to be very difficult to standardize costs for classrooms. A cost in Nairobi, for example, a cement costs 600 shillings in Nairobi, and it costs 1,200 in. Therefore, the most important thing here is to the board to recruit people with the capacity to do the BQs and the technical know-how in terms of designing this.
The issue of education, Mr. Speaker, parents used to contribute to build schools, build toilets, build classes. But now, I think most of this country, parents are now able to spend their money on, on other issues so that NGCDF can actually do those constructions. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of audits, I've noted that it is true that we all have to be audited, and the Auditor General and his team have to go to every constituency every so often and give a report. But I have observed that severally the reports that they give, when they go to any place to do an audit, they're supposed to go and ask questions of the fund manager. Unfortunately, there are times that the questions that have been asked, we call them audit queries, before they are responded to, they find their place or their space in media. So the questions that have been asked before the fund manager answers, somebody leaks them out, and then it looks like the money has been lost, when there's no money lost. In fact, most of those questions can actually be easily answered. So it's important that the Auditor General's office notes that before you receive a response, do not release that report, because that report basically is half-baked. And that's why you saw about 2-3 years ago, there was a report that said, I think almost 99% of members of parliament were accused of having embezzled CDF funds. The other issue that is critical to note is that, of course, this is a political fund. Unfortunately, members of parliament do not implement the projects. Our role is simply to oversight. But anybody who is aspiring to be a member of parliament in Kenya, any one of the 290 constituencies, is going to go for CDF and look for mistakes so that they use that against the sitting member. That has been the norm all over. In fact, the reason why...
These are the two people who are very critical for the success of the operation of this CDF, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, and I support.
Member for Kinangop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to support the report by Special Funds Committee on the audited report on CDF accounts of the said constituencies in Kiambu County. From the onset, I want to join my colleagues in the chorus that CDF is what I would call miracle in the village, because this is the only fund that is transforming lives in our individual constituencies and changing lives of people who had no hope, giving them hope. But from on the same note, Mr. Speaker, you realize that CDF is given to constituencies equally. And I believe that equality is not equity, because some constituencies are quite big, populous and vast. And giving an example of my own constituency, Mr. Speaker, whereby the size of my constituency is about 934.7 square kilometers, as compared to some constituencies whereby I happen to sit in one of the I happen to sit in Defense Committee, and one of my colleagues said that his constituency is 8 square kilometers, and I thought that my constituency is almost more than 100 times bigger than that constituency, and yet we get the same allocation of CDF fund. I believe this is the height of inequality and equity that we need to look into. And maybe going forward, we also need to develop a formula that is going to be acceptable, whereby we use population and maybe landmass and all these parameters, just to make sure that we don't disadvantage some constituencies, whereby you find one constituency has about 10 schools, another constituency has about 200 schools, yet we're getting the same funding. It is interesting to see that my colleagues or our colleagues, some colleagues here, are procuring school buses for their schools because that is a priority. Yet some of us are still fighting with mud classes, iron sheet built classes, timber classes. I mean, this is something that we need to address for real. CDF is for purposes of constructing schools and security. We need to look at these parameters when you're developing that formula that is going to really be seen to be effective and give us equity across the board. Mr. Speaker, I have also realized from the report that the chairman mentioned something to do with bursary checks. We need to have a system whereby monies are dispensed via EFT, electronic funds transfer, as opposed to doing checks. We've had challenges whereby some schools that we give, we issue checks to, where they are not banked or they have errors, and maybe that can be corrected in real time if we develop a software that is going to be uniform and standardized to all constituencies, so that then we disburse money via the EFT. Mr. Speaker, there is also the issue of late disbursements. We are not able to implement or the constituencies are not able to implement their projects in time because the board or the treasury is delaying in disbursing these funds. And I also realize there's also this issue of, again, inequality in terms of disbursing the same. You find that when one constituency is 100% has received all the funding, the other constituency is maybe at 20%. We need to know why this is happening. As much as they have given their priorities or given the list of the projects that needs to be done. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am for the opinion that this parliament do what we're supposed to do and maybe force the board to disburse money as and when it's required, so that then we don't jump to the next financial year before receiving our disbursements. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the report.
Very well.
Honorable Amin Kasim.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to add my support on this report presented by Special Funds Committee. Honorable Speaker, CDF and its contribution in terms of development of the society is extremely important and significant, and it has changed the lives of many people, and particularly for those who want to pursue education, and in terms of infrastructure improvement, in terms of classrooms, and so many other things that it is within the mandate of CDF. It has done significant improvement, particularly in support to security matters, particularly in construction of the police and sub-district headquarters. Honorable Speaker, CDF, as far as I'm concerned, it has been transformative in terms of its allocation and support to development in the rural. There have been a similar arrangement which has been done by some counties, although it is not anchored in law and providing for ward funds. Honorable Speaker, if you look at it and compare the contribution of CDF and the ward funds, particularly an equal amount of money, you will be able to realize that the CDF has had a mark, and it's visible in terms of the infrastructure improvement, particularly in the schools and those that have been designed for. So I will suggest into the future that if, as we process and proceed on to the BBI, if we can be able to realize an increment in terms of the CDF contribution to a 5% or 10%, so that we can have a meaningful improvement. Honorable Speaker, one thing I've noted is that the government of Kenya has rolled out 100% transition. 100% transition means every child who finished class 8 has to proceed to secondary school. And what the government have done, despite initiating the policy, there was no commensurate development or funds allocated for development of classrooms and other infrastructure or labs. So what has happened is that CDF has become very handy in supporting the 100% transition which has been rolled out by the government of Kenya. Particularly, we have also realized that day schools have had a significant impact, because if we are able to construct not boarding schools but day schools, and we will realize so many of the children can still be able to go to their homes, their comfort of their homes, and go to school from a day school. So if we emphasize on construction of day schools, then we will have a significant impact in trying to support education. Honorable Speaker, through the support of CDF, I was able to roll out 3 girls' secondary schools in the last 3 years, 3 girls' secondary schools, with an enrollment of about 1,500 girls. That is a significant improvement in a pastoral setting where girls are not known go to school. So the contribution and this life-changing aspect of the CDF is significant, and something that can be emulated by any meaningful development partners to the future. Honorable Speaker, through the CDF, I was able to initiate the development of a sub-district which has been given to me, which has been gazetted by the Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and way back in 2017, and could not be able to move because of lack of funding. So we were able to build an office block and a residential for the district sub-DCC for Korofarar through the CDF. So the significance of CDF is enormous, and it's something that needs to be supported so that we can be able to change the life of our people. Thank you.
Honorable Tiende Amolo. Well, I'm just following the list, honorable members. I will not follow the hands. No, I'm not. You have let it out, so we go to the next one on the line, and that would be the majority whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me to really appreciate the report by the Committee on Special Funds and thank the entire committee for the good work that they've done. Honorable Speaker, what comes out of this is the question that is, what is an audit, Honorable Speaker? An audit, in my view, is not a sentence that puts you in trouble. It's not a sentence, Honorable Speaker, that blames you. Instead, Honorable Speaker, to me, an audit is simply a statement to enable you correct the past for the better of tomorrow. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I feel an audit that is done properly will help an organization to run its affairs very well. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I want to agree and appreciate the report as it is in entirety, so that the various constituencies, Honorable Speaker, that are involved can now improve from what has been highlighted from the audit, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, some of the key issues that have come up is the issues of reallocation of funds. I want to agree that reallocation is a challenge, Honorable Speaker, not just emanating from the constituency itself alone, but also, Honorable Speaker, the manner in which the CDF board takes time to effect the changes that are proposed coming out of reallocation, Honorable Speaker, is a lot of time. Therefore, I wish to ask that the CEO, together with the board, let them recognize the issue that they are a secretariat, they are supporting the various constituencies in terms of implementing the fund, and therefore let them be very effective when it comes to reallocation, Honorable Speaker. This fund is bottom-up in the approach of the operation of the fund, and when a particular need existed 6 months ago, varies from what is possible today, Honorable Speaker, let the board now appreciate and see that it changes to that effect, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, it's my plea and request to the board that let them quickly move. Honorable Speaker, for instance, we received a circular from the board asking that we can vary funding from bursary to other development concerns. For instance, building of schools, classrooms because of the COVID issues. But Honorable Speaker, for those who applied up to today, that transfer has not, that issue has not been effected. How do you now put that into action on the ground? Yet, Honorable Speaker, we can see the CS for Education is talking of this month, next week, this month, the following week, until he'll make a quick decision, Honorable Speaker, on when is it going to reopen schools. Should he say he reopens in October, Honorable Speaker, it means the funds that were committed from the bursaries will still not have been effectively put to use. And yet we know, Honorable Speaker, Public Procurement Disposal Act gives us numbers of days when we are supposed to procure. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the issue of reallocation is an issue which must be supported by the board and the membership of the CDF, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the issues that came out from the report talks about the parities in terms of the amounts which are used. For example, building a class at 500 shillings, 1,000 shillings, same institution, building another class at 600 or 800, Honorable Speaker. That's an issue of quantity. And Honorable Speaker, I would want to say it shouldn't be used to either abuse or to correct the issues that are happening in a particular constituency. Instead, Honorable Speaker, should you build up a one-story building equivalent to 2 classrooms, by virtue of the 2 floors, the ratio will be different. Should you build, Honorable Speaker, using bricks, for example, and using blocks would be different. Should you use natural stones, Honorable Speaker, versus the machine-cut stones, the costing will be different. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, universality in terms of the pricing, let it be put to use, let it be put by the board, so that the QS can be able to ascertain what are the relatively acceptable prices that apply for a particular square meters of a building. With that in mind, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support the report.
Honorable Dr. Gogo. Dr. Lillian Gogo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to indulge in this matter. And I think those who have spoken ahead of me have well articulated matters NGCDF. And I must not take a lot of time to belabor the point that NGCDF has literally changed lives of communities. And apart from many other things that should be done to NGCDF is that this particular fund should be constitutionalized because NGCDF is the main fund that is felt by that very person that is at the ground level. And all the NGCDF funds are well audited. And I want to thank the member who indicated that there was an amendment that made it to be NGCDF, that made the role of member of parliament be reduced mainly to an oversight role. And the member of parliament should participate mainly in the oversight committee, the CDF oversight committee, as a member. And we have had many, many castigations of members of parliament when it comes to matters at NGCDF. And it is high time that we told our own story as members of parliament, because if we don't tell our own story as lions, then the hunter is going to get credit for what has happened. But as it were, NGCDF is literally managed by communities. And NGCDF has a fund account manager that disburses funds as they work together with the district accountant. So we should have NGCDF not tampered with in any way. But at the same time, I stand here, Honorable Speaker, to question why there are so many auditors that audit the accounts of NGCDF. And I've just learned today that we have an auditor from the board, NGCDF board, and from an auditor from the Auditor General's office. But as I stand from here, there is always an auditor auditing accounts of Rangwe NGCDF every week. Literally every week there is somebody auditing accounts of NGCDF. Mara, this one now is from the county. Then we have another one from the sub-county. Then another one has come from Kisumu. Then there is a team from Nairobi. And I think we also get a regional team that goes to audit accounts of Rangwe NGCDF. So from where I stand, the procedure is very clear on the management of this particular fund. And I want to echo and laud the work that has been, the report that has been given by this committee, Special Funds Committee, and I also want to support their work and highlighting various issues that affect NGCDF. Honorable Speaker, the way one of my colleagues has said here, that the projects are identified by the community. We have provisions for making roads that go to schools, but when the community wants a bus, and I found that school buses are so close to the hearts of communities, who is the committee to refuse what the community wants? So there are clear procedures for managing this particular fund. I would propose and suggest that the amounts be increased, because previously the 2.5% was obtained from the main fund, but it was reduced to getting 2.5% from what is given to the national government. If we would have a situation, Honorable Speaker, where we have more money allocated to NGCDF, more work done by NGCDF, then this noise that goes around the member of parliament, water, member of parliament has not done. When it comes to schools,
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying that
you are number 4.
CDF.
And the 3 were to my left.
Okay, I need to familiarize myself with your left and right.
Honorable Omboko Milemba, what is it?
Mr. Speaker, you note that they are taking my time.
Take Senior Kioni's time, but in the morning you ruled that because of the spacing now, the mask is a must.
Yeah.
So could the Honorable have his mask? Thank you.
Yes. Well,
Mr. Speaker, he didn't have to take all that time to
yes,
just say that
it's a very serious thing, Honorable Kioni.
And
In fact, I'm surprised that I noticed you at all. Actually, I might use that as, anyway, you are lucky you have already had your floor, otherwise I would not have noticed you at all. But I realize it's because of the multicolor gadget that you have used. But please.
You are not likely to threaten me, Mr. Speaker.
Well,
it's very difficult too.
But
Mr. Speaker, I was going to say
I don't
that
threaten. I take action.
All right, Mr. Speaker, I was going to say that CDF is not a political fad. There is a member who said that a little bit earlier, and when you say that, you feed into the legal exercises that are taking place, and you can arm others who would want to do away with CDF. It is not a political fund, it's a special fund that is meant to bring development to our area. A fund that was introduced way back, I think, in 2003, 2002, thereabout, when members realized that the national government was not having impact in terms of development at the constituency level. And that is why they came up with the CDF, which has had monumental impact in the constituencies, including mine. I can tell you that any constitutional amendment that is on the way through this House or through BBI or any other channel that may want to take away CDF or that does not give prominence to the CDF will likely have difficulties passing. I am encouraged to see that we have a county development fund bill that is before us in complete appreciation that unless we have funds that have been earmarked for development to the smallest unit in this country, there are areas that will never be developed and will continue suffering because the amount of money that is meant for development has been or is always consumed through other areas that are of recurrent nature. And that is what informed the members back in the year 2002 that came up with the CDF. Mr. Speaker, I think it is important to note also that CDF, only 6% of the amount of money that has been sent to the constituency is allowed for recurrent expenditure. Some 3% also for monitoring. But a whole 90%, 91% of the funds go towards development. Mr. Speaker, this is a model that we need to take and pass on to the devolved funds. In fact, there are times I feel like we may want to chop off some money that is taken for devolution and put it in CDF. I mean, it is also another way of devolving funds and development to the people. I know we are all happy about devolution, but the happiness in devolution should come because it is impacting on the people in form of development. And if it is not, we have to look at which are other channels, which are these other ways of bringing around development in our areas that is more effective. And I am saying this as a challenge to county governments. We can see the impact CDF is having. Why is it that we can't see the same impact from county devolved funds? Yet they are receiving billions. This is just 100 million shillings, and the impact is so massive. You cannot believe that a county will receive 5 billion shillings, and you fail to see any amount of impact in your area. Mr. Speaker, I know that in that audit, there was the issue of standardization of classrooms and the rest. I want to caution the committee, that's a very dangerous route to follow, because factors that affect the cost of development vary from one area to the other. And I think there are many, many papers that have been written on that, and you can also, but I know you need to audit the cost of that classroom as opposed to trying to look for a way of standardizing the cost of constructing classrooms across. Mr. Speaker, also, there are some areas where you seek for permission to help in the access of education. And in specifically, I'm talking about access roads. When you try to help pupils get to a school, the board is a little reluctant, and I think they need to address that issue in a better way because it is very crucial in many places. Mr. Speaker, the audit committee, the special funds committee needs to pay attention to this fact, that the act and the board requires you to put a name or to label the building, and you label it using ordinary paint. I think it is a thing that requires more thinking. The man who was there before me just loved what I had done before, and he actually labeled the buildings to reflect his term. It's the most useless thing that you require constituencies to do. You need to address some of these issues so that it becomes more progressive. Come up with something that is better, and also don't replace the name of the school with the financial year. I mean, you are confusing pupils in the school. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I will give Honorable Manzo, and kindly members, if we can speak for a few minutes, we'll be able to reach as many members as possible, because I see the interest is a bit high.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really want to thank the chairman and the Special Funds Committee for a job well done in Kiambu County. And when you look at the recommendations, they reflect some weaknesses which has affected other counties, and there's definitely room for improvement on the NGCDF board and on the auditors, so that, Mr. Speaker, we can serve the people better. Mr. Speaker, this fund gets very tricky when it is an election time, and a lot of people really want to use every method. It must go clearly to the country that the member of parliament is purely doing oversight, does not participate, and the committees, the local committees which deal with this fund, really also are very careful and are also watched by the people there. And that's why you find that this fund is very difficult. When a check has been issued to construct a classroom somewhere, for anyone to steal any money, whether they use a contractor or whether they use a local fundi, and the committee implements itself. And it is clear that it can easily be accounted for and even can easily be valued. And therefore, when it comes to standardization, I've heard of something to do with the standards. And there are many ways you can look at it. It can be audited, and at the same time, you know, the Ministry of Housing can come up with a standard like the way we did our offices. There's a certain level of standard, and from the little money is given, you could see all CDF national government CDF offices in the country. They came up with very, very good offices at a reasonable cost, and the design was almost the same, Mr. Speaker. So I really want to commend the team and also say that this is a fund, and its model should be replicated in other methods of making sure that the devolution works. Because, you know, devolution has been there for 7 years now. Averagely, every county has received like 80 billion. But CDF, which is about, at the same time, about 10% of that, you can be able to spot the impact in the constituencies, and you can see how it has worked, and the projects can be seen, and they are of good standards and thoroughly monitored. Finally, I would like to talk about the oversight. There has to be really a team to oversight, because currently what is happening is that although you have the auditors, the development committees are the ones which are oversighting themselves. So it is very important that we have the MP's office is now empowered to do the oversight and to make sure that every little detail is followed. And I'm sure if we do that, if we empower the oversighting, then the reports will be so clear, you not have members of parliament be handed down, probably for a matter they have no responsibility and they are not aware of. And finally, as a lawyer, I would like to tell members that it is very, very important we just keep to our side of oversight, because should there be conflict of interest in any way, then one is likely to be charged and is likely to spoil your politics. CDF alone makes so many members not come back to this house. I really want to support, and I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Honorable oh, no, let me go the other side. Honorable Melly. Absent. Okay, next to him, Honorable Limo. Absent also?
No.
Okay.
I cannot be absent, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for giving me this chance to contribute to this very, very important report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the CDF is a household name, Mr. Speaker, and I want to really congratulate the committee for coming up with such a report. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, that this CDF, especially the CDF Act, has gone through several stages, and I think the last amendment was in 2015, when it was actually changed to NGCDF, which the aim actually of ensuring that this fund is for the purpose of implementing only projects which are touching on national government functions. The reason for that, Mr. Speaker, is that there was a lot of use and cries from the governors. Because then the governors were accusing CDF of implementing projects which belong to counties. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say it's very sad that since CDF stopped funding projects in water, especially in the villages, projects in early childhood classrooms, projects in health facilities, there have never been any construction, meaningful construction done by the county government, especially in the health sector. In my constituency, Mr. Speaker, and indeed, I know you are my neighbor, Mr. Speaker, and because you cannot speak while you are on the chair, I can actually speak on your behalf that you did very well when you constructed a lot of health centers in your constituency. And myself as a mono, I followed you, Mr. Speaker, and we did very well. But right now, the counties have not even used those facilities. They are not providing medicine and staff to serve the people of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, this CDF, when we changed it from CDF to NGCDF, we now concentrate on education and security. However, the other sectors are suffering. In the 11th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, I remember that many members who were in this House then were actually proposing that the devolution be done in a model looking like CDF. But then there was a lot of noise from the then chair of Council of Governors, our friend Isaac Ruto. Isaac Ruto said these are the agents of anti-devolution. Because we were saying that because we have tried CDF model and it's working, we could have actually implemented that and avoided the duplication of national government into county governments, where county governments are very busy forming very big structure, having CSS, they're calling PSS, and yet it is not in the constitution. They are even employing people like chief of staff and all sorts of things. So counties currently, Mr. Speaker, are spending over 80% on recurrent and remaining only with 20%, while CDF is actually spending 90% on development, including money going to Wananchi Direct, so to the National Assembly. The issue of increasing funding to CDF lies in allocation of funding during the budget process. By the way, the NGCDF Act says at least 2.5% goes to CDF. It doesn't say 2.5%, at least. So you can even put it during allocation of funding here. If we become a house, which we know it is a house of honor, we must allocate more money to CDF and stop the issues of going round. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Honorable Obara Akinyi, member for Kasipul, Kabondo Kasipul.
Thank you. At least you've got it right. Kabondo Kasipul constituency. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I too stand to support the report of the committee, and I want to agree with the sentiments of my colleagues.
Order now. Who are these two members? Seated the two members there. Is that Honorable? I can't be able to see, but before I see, I think they should observe some social distancing. Okay, proceed.
Mr. Chairman, as I've said, Mr. Speaker, as I've said that I too support the sentiments of my committee, of my colleagues, on the area that the NGCDF has played a critical role, and we cannot understate. Across almost all constituencies, this is obvious, to the extent that you wonder, as my colleagues have said, what exactly is happening to the money of the county. My colleagues will agree with me that on all problems that face the constituents, the first stop is at the MP's office, and they will ask you things like health. We don't have medicine. We don't have water, we don't have roads, we are looking for fertilizer, and you wonder that maybe we need to do a little more we need to, again, educate our citizens on the critical roles of these offices so that they know that when they want pads and those kind of things, where they're supposed to go. If they're talking of health and all those devolved functions, they know where they're supposed to go. And the office of the MP, what they're supposed to do. That has been a problem in my first year of office. Mr. Speaker, I'll just talk on one area of observation, and that was on the role of the district accountant. Mr. Speaker, while playing my overall oversight role, I have noticed something that actually was picked by the committee on managing the accounts of the NGCDF. Mr. Speaker, how can a district accountant take 7 months before they even do reconciliation of accounts? How can they take 7 months with making no entry in the vote book? And you wonder, because these are the most basic functions of accounting. And this is happening, so at the end of the year, they have nothing to show the auditors. The issue is, where are these documents? We don't have it, we are still looking for them. Where are these? Because they don't keep records the way they are supposed to. So this is an area that I think the committee should strongly recommend that the board should have their own independent auditors to be not accountants, to be handling the books of accounts for the NGCDF, even if it means coming together, maybe a few sub-counties together with one accountant to look at their books. Otherwise, I think this is an area where money is lost if we are not careful. And hey, there's so much loud consultation, Mr. Speaker.
Order, members. Actually, there are two. Well, I mean, it can be understood when it's the leader of majority consulting, because there are 3 other groups. One led by Nyandarua and Kirinyaga combined, and another one close by here. Yeah? So please, let's give Honorable Akinyi Obara
Mr. Speaker,
an opportunity to, canvass her issues in peace.
Finally, if I must say that even as we do what we are doing with the NGCDF, this country must critically look at how money is disbursed to the counties if we are to realize the gains of devolution. There's so much seepage, there's so much wastage, that if we are not careful, and I hear now that they want to be allowed to borrow money. I got scared when I heard that, to borrow money. Mr. Speaker, if that happens, I think this country will be completely, strangled with the debts. Thank you very much. I support.
Very well. Honorable Nguna Ngusia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity given to me.
Okay, so after them, I'll give 2 members from this other side.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, let me congratulate the committee for the good job actually they have done. And Mr. Honorable Kadhure was very eloquent on it and articulative. Mr. Speaker, I have realized actually most of the villages in this country actually, they have never seen any other government fund except CDF, the fund which is given to the constituencies. And I would like to actually laud Honorable Kibaki for bringing up this issue of CDF. Why it not for CDF? Most of the villages will have not even seen anything from the government. So it's acting as a way of equalizing the development and everything in this country. Mr. Speaker, I have realized that from the report, majority of the constituencies actually are experiencing the same challenges and same problems when it comes to issues of CDF. If you look at what has already been raised, like the issue of district accountant, who is actually supposed to authorize every check that is going to leave that office, we share the same problem, and I think it's high time we start engaging them and ensuring that the checks and everything is delivered in time. You will find that the committee has already approved a project. It is taking too long for the district accountant, even a month, to approve that check, and those are some of the issues we need to iron out. The issue of the other things like tenders, actually, when we appoint our committees, it is very important to encourage the board to be fair when it comes to issue of tendering. And I have been surprised in many occasions, people coming, suppliers, contractors, businessmen coming to my office to ask for tenders. But tenders are not given by members of parliament. So I think it's also high time we educate Kenyans on how things are done with the CDF Act and the CDF committee. Mr. Speaker, I have realized that this fund, if properly utilized, actually, we can see a lot of development. But I will give you an example. Some constituencies, when it comes to issues of bursary, you will find a constituent somewhere has got only 3,000 students, while mine has got over 30,000 students schooling in the same constituents, and we are getting the same allocation of bursary. So there's this issue of lack of equalization, and it is high time we also create another fund, apart from the equalization fund we have been talking about in CDF, to ensure constituencies which have got large population, constituencies with highest number of schools, actually don't get discriminated in this issue. If you look at the number of schools I have in my constituencies, over 208 schools, and we are actually being given the same amount with the Stare, which has got only like 7 schools. I think, Mr. Speaker, that is not a fair deal, and we need to look at these issues. Issues of BBI. There's no way, actually, we will talk of Ward Development Fund without Constituency Development Fund, CDF. We need to enhance it. And if it can be implemented, the Ward Development Fund actually can be implemented the way CDF is done, I think we are going to achieve meaningful development. Mr. Speaker, you will see some of the activities which are done by the CDF are so limited. Like the area where I come from, the perennial issues of water shortage is always there, but I can't do anything with that money, and yet I will not be addressing the issues of that community in particular. So with these few remarks, Mr. Speaker, let the CDF actually also perform other activities like water, like roads and other things, apart from only security and education. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Honorable Pukose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this report by the Committee on Special Funds Accounts Committee. On the onset, Honorable Speaker, I want to declare that I'm a member of that committee, and I support the report that was done by the committee. Honorable Speaker, when you read the report, you realize that one of the key issues, which in its introductory part, it talks of Section 226, subsection 5 of our Constitution, which, Honorable Speaker, it holds every officer accountable, whether you are in a political office or an administrative office, for any of the, either directly or indirectly, you are able to direct the procurement process, so that even officers, funds managers who have done, who have participated in terms of allocations, they should be able to come and respond to these audit queries. Honorable Speaker, the report covers 3 financial years, 2014, 2013, 2014, 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016. But when you look at it, Honorable Speaker, we are in a 2019 now, 2020 financial year. The latest audited account by the Auditor General is the 2017-2018. And I think, Honorable Speaker, in our last meeting with the committee, we agreed that we need to cover as much ground as possible now, especially, and we want to thank your office for allowing us to retreat this week to cover all the constituencies in the coastal region. Honorable Speaker, it's important that members are able also to read the audit reports from their constituencies, because when issues are picked by the committee, at times you'll find that members will only be realizing some of these things when they are tabled in the floor here. But it's important that when the majority leader tables the constituency audit reports by the Auditor General, members are able to look at it and see the issues that are happening within their constituencies. Because when you look at this report, Katuntu North, Juja, and Thika, they constructed offices and for the security. And up to the time the report was being done, those offices have not been occupied. Then it begs the question whether public participation was done in terms of identifying those projects, because that is a waste of funds, and yet those are offices that could have been utilized to provide security for people within those areas. So I think it's important that members are able to look at some of these reports. Honorable Speaker, it also talks of stealth checks. When you have stealth checks, I think it's important for members to, and these are checks as a result of bursaries. It's important for members to be able to look at some of these stealth checks, because outside there you have needy students who might miss school, yet you have money that is bursary money as a result of stealth checks that is lying idly within your account, and somebody else could have benefited from this. Honorable Speaker, I think we would also ask the House that when we look at some of the areas, because at times the honorable members might not be able to realize that there are activities or there are projects which have been done and they might not have been done in a way which should have been done. It is also important that at one stage or another, we are able to support the committee to hold those funds accounts managers or the PMCs or whoever is responsible accountable for some of those projects, so that at the end of the day, the member is able to protect his integrity, so that it does not seem to be that it's the member who has caused loss of public funds. Honorable Speaker, when you look at this report, we're also talking about, which many members have contributed about, the issue of having an accountant to look at the accounts of the constituency. Our committee recommendation is to have an accountant in every constituency, but that can be debatable, so that if we can be able to have even one accountant per 2 constituencies or paired within a county, then I think that can be able to address many of the issues. So with those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Member for Tarbaj, I see you, doing some pastoralist activity from one seat to the other. Your card is not working. So the best thing is for you to go back to the seat which you are in. Then I give you that opportunity. Because I know you were actually here very early and you made that press. But your card is not working. You'll have to have it done. You can use that one. You see the one which is next to you? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And first and foremost, let me congratulate the committee for doing a good job. And the issues which were raised in Kiambu is similar to even my county and my constituency. We cannot overemphasize the impact of CDF in development of the areas, and especially on the choice of security and education is a very good, especially on areas like our marginalized areas, which had low enrollment ever in its lifetime. It is doing a very good job, and enrollment has increased. Even at the county level, where even though it is not anchored in law, ward-based fund has been put. A lot of improvement or development has been done using this ward-based fund. And it is good, so long as we need to improve on devolution, we need to increase the funding for ward development fund and anchored in law, if the PBI is supposed to come. On the third issue which I want to discuss is on the issue of treasury, where disbursement, payments, and implementation is reduced or delayed because one person cannot be found who is supposed to sign the checks. Even where there are institutions, all other institutions, payments are done within themselves. Why can the CDF fund be done the same way? Where we employ even workers, and for people, works officers are employed within the CDF. We need to have, even if it is changing the law, the CDF Act, we need to change the Act such that payments are done internally. I think that's the best way. On one of the colleagues who have said standardization. Standardization cannot be done because the costs are different. Areas like ours, it takes a long distance even to bring materials. There is not even water in some areas. We even pay payments on security. So we cannot standardize cost and even infrastructure. The weather and of different regions are not the same. We cannot standardize on payments and we cannot standardize on cost and infrastructure. Thank you. I support the motion.
It is Honorable Akoth Gesa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for getting my name right. It's Honorable Akoth Gesa, as you say. Mrembo Wasuba. That is the one you forgot. Mr. Speaker, I want to support the report of the committee and agree with the members that CDF has actually changed the landscape of development in the country. And I remember when we were coming up with the new constitution, Honorable Amina Abdallah told me, and she told me that I would one day agree with her. At that time, I disagreed with her. And I do agree with her now that what we needed to do was economic devolution and not political devolution. We would not actually have the problems that we are having now between the Senate and governors because the money would already be in CDF and we would be disbursing money for building health facilities, building ECDs and every other work that the county government should do. Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that we have significantly much less money than the county governments, for most of us, if you will see that even though we are not doing the bigger projects that they're supposed to do, you can actually see the work of CDF in every single village. There would be a class, there would be a lab, there would be a dormitory, there would be fencing, there would be water in schools, roads that lead to schools, security in facilities. So, Mr. Speaker, NGCDF is doing quite a bit of work. The only challenge is that it is very misunderstood. Most people do not know the structure, and I think it will be very, very important that the CDF board does a lot of work of civic education, and the way we can facilitate that for the NGCDF is as the parliament, we need to put in funds so that that civic education takes effect. A lot of people think that members of parliament are in charge of CDF, and as members have said here, that a lot of people are actually asking members to give them tenders. And we have project management committees. And CDF is actually one of the funds that is now very, very streamlined, that the role of the MP is almost remote. And MPs may facilitate in terms of getting the public participation so that the public's voice is heard. But in terms of the work, we have PMCs that are actually effecting this work. I was shocked that even as late as yesterday, one of my chiefs who didn't understand what the role of a PMC is, when our CDF was actually going to undertake a project for his own village, he ran away because people have demonized CDF that they think that if it's called to sit in any PMC, it is something that is very sinister. Fortunately, because the DCC understands, the DCC gave us somebody else to be in the PMC, because sitting in the PMC means that your voice is heard, means that you are the one who actually ensures that the tendering process is done well, means that the building will be done to your standard. The only challenge that I would see that even as this committee is going around that they should help us in, is talk, I don't think, well, it's actually the committee, because they're the ones who should bring this amendment, that we have an oversight committee that currently earns only 30,000 shillings a year, and yet we are expected to undertake our oversight mandate well. I think sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot as members of parliament, that if our primary role is ensuring oversight, how can we be oversighting millions worth of projects with 30,000 shillings in a whole year? That means even if you are to divide it, Mr. Speaker, I think we would be spending probably 2,000 shillings in oversight in a year. So that is something that we need to do. Mr. Speaker, there need to be greater oversight from the board of the fund account managers. That you find a lot of challenges and problems that come in CDF are related directly to fund account managers, yet when there's a problem, the first person that is called is the member of parliament. I think at one point, MPs need to go to court to challenge where an MP is dragged in, where there's no direct link between an MP and any lost fund, because it's actually an abuse of the process of law, bringing MPs in things that really do not concern them. Mr. Speaker, I see my time is over and I support.
Honorable Hai Kamizigi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute. Mr. Speaker, mine will be brief. And looking at things, I think I'm the only county MP who is speaking to this. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that NGCDF is a fund that is doing a marvelous work in this country, Mr. Speaker. And it is a fund that needs a lot of support where necessary, so that it can be more efficient. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I also want to say there's NGAF. NGAF is a fund also which needs support. It is also a national government fund. And it's a fund which is also transforming lives in this country. And therefore, it needs a lot of support. Otherwise, I want to really congratulate the Special Fund Committee for that good report, and thank you for this opportunity. I support.
Very well. And we go to Honorable Ouma Ochieng.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues who have lauded the nobility and the importance of...
These are members, you know, making gestures. You will get your, you will have your, I'm just following the list here, so you'll get your opportunity. You are not too many anymore. You are almost the numbers that can be transacted quickly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I listened to the chairman of the special...
I know probably many members are looking at Honorable Chieng getting an opportunity.
I was here at 2:30, Mr. Speaker.
And thinking that he probably has jumped the queue. No, he didn't.
I was here at 2:30, Mr. Speaker.
He was actually in here and left, I think, and his name was on top.
Mr. Speaker, just for the record, I was here at 2:30 today. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the chairperson of Special Funds Committee, and I didn't hear from him anything to do with MP's role in managing the today management of the funds. Yet, Mr. Speaker, what's happening now and has been happening over the last 6-7 months is that the number of MPs, Mr. Speaker, who have been put on a very short leash, that if you say your mind, if you say what's happening in the country, then they threaten you that they're going to investigate your CDF. Mr. Speaker, I want it to be known that the CDF as a fund, the role of the MP is to be patron. The MP doesn't run the day-to-day activities of the fund. Mr. Speaker, I also want to request members of Parliament to look at that law and ensure that you are always away from the nitty-gritty of the fund, because that is not our role. Mr. Speaker, you hardly find white elephants where CDF is concerned, because we've continually improved the law on CDF. And so even if you are to have your own plans, your predecessors, the project done in the previous regime must be finished. That's why you hardly find white elephants within the CDF framework. Mr. Speaker, the efficiency, the lack of bureaucracy, the ease and flexibility with which the CDF is managed makes it the fund for the people. There's not so many forms to be filled. There is not so many procedures to be followed. Speaker, how I wish, Mr. Speaker, that the groups that we have now that get money from Uwezo Fund, the groups that get money from the Women Fund, are able to also participate in the tenders for construction and doing things in the CDF framework without having to be companies. Because if groups can get money, Mr. Speaker, from Uwezo Fund and Women Fund and the Family Action Fund, they should also be allowed to supply and participate in the procurement at the CDF level without requiring so many bureaucratic things like the NCA, KRA, and all that. Mr. Speaker, the impact of the CDF in the country, Mr. Speaker, cannot be unsaid, and that is why we need to have the audits being all-encompassing. The audits should not be only about money, but should be about value for money, what is being achieved, how much is being achieved. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, I dare say that we should start comparing these audit reports. We should start comparing the audit reports for the county governments and the CDF. Mr. Speaker, you'll find, like Honorable Kioni said earlier, that the money that goes into administration CDF is so small, 5-6%. As in, from every 100 million shillings, we can only use 5 million for administration, Mr. Speaker. Contrast that with the county government's fund, where we are now using around 80-90% of the money in wage bills and running costs, and only having 10% for development. And that's why I agree with members who are saying that if we could emulate the structure of CDF in county planning, in county development, Speaker, we would save so much money for development and reduce the bureaucracy that goes with employment and running costs. Because, Speaker, if you get money and at the county level you have the governor, deputy governor, some people calling them ministers, then chief officers, all these have cars, all these have running costs. So, Speaker, how I wish that the country would get the CDF framework as the SI unit for planning for in-development projects in this country, Mr. Speaker. And I support. Thank you.
Honorable Oundo Ojiambo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute on the motion before the House today. On the onset, let me take to congratulate and sincerely thank the committee for presenting this report. Even though the time lag, the period covered, we still have many financial years that needs to be covered so that we come to speed. Honorable Speaker, an audit has always been a recommended management and control tool because it highlights areas of shortcomings, highlights areas of weaknesses, and all of us, whichever level we are operating on, we should willingly accept audit reports and address the issues that emerge out of the audit. Honorable Speaker, the recommendations and the findings and recommendations of the committee are fairly telling. But Honorable Speaker, I want to focus on one or two issues that seems to be a recurrent issue and seems to be slowing down or making it administratively expensive to undertake works under the CDF framework. Number one, it's a requirement that we must involve, the CDF committees must involve the relevant departments of the national government. It's a requirement that the accounts must be kept by the district accountant. As my colleagues have indicated, they're either too busy or they do not find any value in doing CDF work, and that's why you find quite a number of these audit queries arise from poor documentation, arise from an inability to prepare basic things like bank reconciliation and relevant accounts. I would propose to the committee, we need to go back and look at the regulations pertaining to this operation of the CDF and request the board to make amendments to the regulations so that they have their own accountant, they have their own people to do, to supervise the works, generate the BQs, supervise the work, and generate the relevant certificates for payment. Relying on public works people, yet they have so much work, is now resulting in poorly prepared BQs, lack of supervision of the works, and you find some of the structural challenges that are being highlighted here is simply because of lack of supervision and just negligence. I therefore will recommend to the committee, they go back to the CDF board, they make amendments, so that even if it means increasing the amount of administration slightly, that will be okay, as long as it has an independent and completely linked from the national government to the central government in respect of undertaking of the works. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the procurement process. The essence of CDF was to devolve and use local contents. The requirements are now being proposed to undertake works are difficult for ordinary contractors, ordinary self-help groups in their constituencies to meet those requirements. We would suggest that we do some variations to the Public Procurement and Disposal Act or through the regulations to allow local contents and to allow local groups to undertake these projects, because they'll be at a much cheaper price, devoid of things like NCA, the cost involved in getting NCA, the cost involved in getting tax compliance certificates, yet they don't pay taxes. It is becoming cumbersome. So we need to suggest changes so that we have a case of local contents embedded into the process. Finally, Honorable Speaker, I want to challenge the Ministry of Education. I know they have a lot of infrastructure funds. Those infrastructure funds, the cost of doing this work is far much higher than what CDF is doing. The process of identifying the projects that needs to be done is such an opaque way done by the ministry that does not actually highlight the aspirations of the people on the ground. I want to challenge the ministry, partner with the CDF, bring the funds that we have earmarked for any constituency. Let the constituents, through the public participation forum, identify the projects that needs to be done. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support.
Okay, next is the Honorable Lekomuntare Lentojoni Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to support the report from the committee. And Mr. Speaker, we thank God because of the NGCDF in some marginalized areas. The funds are doing a lot of good work in the local area. And Mr. Speaker, maybe something we need to think of, that there are sometimes you as a representative of the people, you go to a place whereby the local people require dispensary, and you are not allowed to use these funds. So I think the committee will look at that because we really need to open up the funds, because we are not seeing what the county government are doing in other places. And Mr. Speaker, at times you get even the preschool kids under 3. The parents request you to do a class, but you are not allowed by law to do that, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, even when you look at the 4th heads in our CDF, if you look at the vote that for the youth, well, we know youth in this country have a lot of challenges. I think it is high time for us to look at the act so that even that vote can be improved so that it can help the youth. Otherwise, I support the report. It is a good one, and I think if we go that direction, Mr. Speaker, our people will be assisted through these funds. Thank you very much.
Honorable Mboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and let me congratulate the chairperson together with the Committee on Special Funds Accounts Committee for this report. The report seems, and it's a true reflection of what's happening everywhere in the country, and therefore it epitomizes exactly the face of CDF, not only in the Kiambu constituencies, but also in the entire country, because it speaks on things that we are also feeling from where we are, even though it was a case study in Kiambu, like standardization of projects, which we are also facing from all the areas of Kenya. It also speaks on the approvals, which have had a challenge, especially where the local people have decided on a project, but you find the approval becomes difficult. Many members have spoken on this, and I think I will just add my voice that what seems to have been brought from bottom up should actually be respected, because that's what the local people want. But on standardization, I would be quick to say that maybe I would advise the committee that look into it a little more. You may not ask the CDF to come up with standardized projects about classrooms, because standard classrooms, and have a background of teaching and trade unionism, is actually found in the Ministry of Education. And they try to come up with a standard classroom and even put some money on it. It's about 1 million to 1.2 million. But again, it never worked for them because of the variations that many members have spoken on in terms of where they come from, the materials, and so on and so forth. And I liked the one of the members who said, for instance, a classroom in northeastern Kenya, because of the temperatures and weather, is extremely different from a classroom elsewhere in this particular country. So that standardization, yes, we can look at it from different perspectives in terms of size, maybe quality, but not necessarily money. Honorable Speaker, it spoke about adulterization of police posts, and the case study was Kiambu. But I think on this report again, I would tell the chair that he considers what Kiambu would be. You know, the needs of different areas are so different. Kiambu, you noticed they were coming up with so many security, and insecurity could have had a historical understanding or item, tool with Kiambu. But if you were to go possibly to Western, you'd find that the asking of police posts would be less, and they'll be asking more of schools and schools and schools. So again, this put into consideration, we cannot completely blame the Kiambu team for security. This could be historical, and therefore maybe we could trace how we can link the CDF bottom demand by the people with the central government ability to actually supply those institutions with the policemen, security people and forces to actually make them active, because possibly that's exactly what they need. But if you come to Western, buses, and you had a few people speak about buses for schools and so on and so forth. Honorable Speaker, this report spoke about checks. In as much as I would support the idea of EFT to schools, but a quick check, Chair, when you retreat back to your committee to understand that the school management system, when you send a blank amount of money that is not clearly put on a particular student, then the follow-up, which is part of the oversight from the parent to the school, that my particular student got the money and therefore is following with the school to see the money does not change from one person to another. I have this background, Chair, and I hope I'll be adding value to this. It's very important. That's why the checks have been doing well. But of course, we cannot live in the reign of paper forever. So I thought I should speak on that. And therefore, and lastly, what I had wanted to really add on this is the youth. The CDF has a very small percentage of the allocation to the youths, and it's mainly going to sports and other areas. But now look at the population of the country. The youths are more. And then they are more creative, and the education system has become that of CBC. So talent search. Then we have sports. Then we have so many things around youth. So possibly, as a committee, help us move to increase the percentage, not only of the fund itself, but also of that particular location to the youth of this particular country, so that they are actually benefiting commensurately with their numbers and population in the country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance that I beg to support.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the report by the Special Funds Committee, and I want to laud the chair, most especially on the details that the report has actually brought forward on the impact of the NGCDF in our society. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that NGCDF, like many other funds the national government actually channels to the ground, is the only fund that is very visible, very explicit. It has touched the lives of many Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, you'll realize that funds that go to Mwananchi from the national governments, especially from ministries, from parastatals, from partners, from all other sources are rarely felt like NGCDF. And I want to laud the initiator of this fund, and more specifically, the founder of this, the member of parliament who actually moved the motion that founded this particular fund. Honorable Speaker, you'll realize that in my constituency, like many other constituencies that honorable members have spoken about, NGCDF has actually seen a number of orphans go to school who could have otherwise not been able to make ends in their lives. We've seen areas where there were no schools, and now they have a good, vibrant primary and secondary schools, and even colleges. Honorable Speaker, you'll realize that the TTIs that the national government has been able to build across the country have actually been successful because of the role of NGCDF. NGCDF factored in 10 million shillings to all those TTIs across the country, and now we have almost over 200 of them. This has seen to make sure that the youth have skills, have manpower, have the understanding on how they can now work in those particular communities. On that note, Mr. Honorable Speaker, NGCDF needs to be actually entrenched in the Constitution and in the laws of the land. You'll realize that NGCDF is so lean in its operation and even structure. And the decision of making way of NGCDF is bottom-up. You'll realize that the public plays a critical role in identification of projects. That's why it is rare to have white elephant projects in NGCDF. You will also realize that the cost of running and maintaining NGCDF is so lean. It is less than 1%, Honorable Speaker, less than 2%. Look at other default funds, the funds that have been taken to county government, billions of shillings, where to run that particular fund alone in some counties, the national government sends about 7 billion shillings to particular counties. But to go to the ground to see the impact of that particular fund, it is not there. You'll realize that most of those funds get consumed at the county headquarters through salaries, through purchase of vehicles, through running the day-to-day operations, some of them even employing non-essential staff. CDF is quite explicit on how many numbers of staff are to be employed, what are their role, and how is the fund oversighted. This is a case where we really need to ensure that members of parliament, we don't play any role. We are just patrons, and we do oversight. I just want to ask this House to ensure that the oversight committee, like the NGCDF committee, be given a lot of powers so that it is able to oversight it well. I think Honorable Member for Suba just said this, that how do you give 30,000 shillings for a whole year to an oversight committee? Yet in essence, they are oversighting 130 million shillings. We really need to give it more funds, and I think this is the chair NGCDF, or the special funds is here, and the NGCDF should hear this, so that as we move forward to next year, let us make sure that the oversight committee, which is able to oversight the standing committee on CDF, will be able to oversight all those projects in that particular constituency without any problem. Two, let's also ensure that this fund is entrenched in the Constitution, so that even as we move forward, the county government.
Member for Tintred, very well spoken. And personally, I've always wondered why we have never had a comparative study between what CDF and the county government does for development funds, because this development is happening in the same areas. It is high time, as we think about the model that we want to take as a country, for development of our country, we do this comparative study, because why should we beat about the bush if something is working and the other one is not working? Very well. So we'll have the Honorable Sotsi Godfrey. He's not in the House. The Honorable Mutua. Not in the House. I'm just running through the list because I've just come in. The Honorable Ole Kenta Moitalel, you've been here. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'd like to, first of all, commend the committee for doing such a good job. Honorable Speaker, I'd like to first of all state, as you have said, that when you look at what CDF has done in this country and what the county governments have done, these activities are worlds apart. In fact, if anything, if you look at the kind of monies some of the governors charged of stealing, hundreds of millions, you wonder what the balance of what has been left at the counties is doing, because there is nothing at all on the ground to show that any money has been disbursed through the county governments. Honorable Speaker, the importance of CDF cannot be gainsaid. In fact, we have had members of parliaments from other jurisdictions trooping to Kenya to find out how CDFs are run, and most of them have actually started such kind of funds in their countries. Honorable Speaker, it's very important to know that without CDF, if CDF was not introduced in 2002, we will not have reached the developmental goals that we have so far in this country. Honorable Speaker, the only problem is this: the limitation of the application of these funds to education and security has actually left a lot of other sectors unattended. And most of them, like, for example, roads, water, health services, have actually been left in a quagmire because the county governments are not actually working on them. And as one of the members has suggested, it's important that we connect security with infrastructure, because, for example, if there is no infrastructure, how can you ensure that there is security? If, for example, there is no good road network. If there is no water, how do you ensure that our children actually get healthy sustenance? If, for example, there is no health, there are no health facilities, how do you ensure that our children are actually secure? So it's imperative that these things are seen as interconnected, such that those roles must be returned back to the CDS, because while we are doing that in the last parliament, a lot was achieved and a lot has been lost. And in fact, Honorable Speaker, we need more additional funds to the CDF, and we cannot run away from it. Because if the minimum is 2% of the budget, for example, minimum, what we are getting is not even that minimum. So it's important that we had it so that it is actually able to assist our people, other than letting a few hyenas take everything from our people. Honorable Speaker, I've seen the challenges that were actually highlighted by the committee, and one of them is actually the issue of oversight committees. When you give 30,000 to an oversight committee that is supposed to oversee the implementation of these projects, then you wonder what's happening. It's actually another way of saying that nobody wants this kind of oversight. And I think it's time the committee looked at it so that at least they can have up to a minimum of 3%. Honorable Speaker, the issue of bursary going stale is a big issue. And I think, as the committee said, there must be ways, we must find ways of ensuring that this money goes to assist these children. Because sometimes money is sent to the schools, the children have either left the college or they are not able to come, they are not even aware the money has been sent, and some of this money just gets lost through some funny and dubious, and that must be actually changed. There is also the issue of the police posts and police stations. I do not really blame the members or the CDF board or even the CDF committees, because there is a need for security facilities. It's only that the national government or the Ministry of the Interior is not actually taking care of the security of the people seriously, because if that was the case, they will definitely post people there. They are talking about lack of housing, lack of good working facilities like police stations, and when you build them, they fail then to send the people there, to deploy people, the police force there. And that is wrong, because we are doing it for the people, and the security of the people is paramount. Giving them the security is paramount. So I think it is important that the ministry takes note of this and deploys officers there. There is also the other issue of accounting, especially the district accountant. We have all encountered a lot of problems. People are not either at their workstations or they do not even want to work or do their accounts properly. And I think it's important that NGCDF has its own accountants so that we have a seamless operations.
The honorable, you seem to have had quite a bit to say, but it is all right if you have done. Very well, very well. That's senior. We shall have contribution from the Honorable Tutwek, member for Mogotia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to. The NGCDF is the greatest thing. It is the greatest thing since sliced bread was created. I want to say, as many members have stood and testified about the success of this model in terms of moving the development agenda of the nation forward in many counties and in many constituencies. In fact, the expectation nowadays of many members of the public is that they would like to see the members of parliament doing roads, doing health issues, doing water, doing schools, and even power issues. In fact, Mr. Speaker, this is an area which I would like the committee to look at it, that I know the Act specifies at least 2.5% of the budget to go towards this particular aspect of investment. Currently, the NGCDF focuses more on development. As we have been told, about 90% of the money goes towards development, and about 10% goes to recurrent expenditure. However, areas like the youth is underfunded, around 2% in sports. I would like to say we need to move this upwards. We need to carry out amendments so that they can actually benefit from the support of NGCDF funds, so that we go up to around 10%, so that things like talent can be identified. However, an area also which needs to be covered in the Act is the issue of ICT. We've been requested to put up ICT centers, but the recurrent expenditure associated with ICT centers is not covered. I think we need an amendment so that we can actually, the CDF committees can hire staff to run these centers once they are built. Otherwise, and especially currently when most of the institutions, the universities, and even schools are actually running courses online. I think this is an area whereby the use of the resource centers will be very useful, especially for students coming from rural areas, Mr. Speaker. So I think this is an area where we need to amend so that currently there are no recurrent expenditure to cover the staff who can manage these centers. So we need to amend the Act so that the committees can recruit ICT managers or technicians to man these particular centers. Secondly, we have these other funds like WESO Fund, youth funds, which are not really making impact in the ground, Mr. Speaker. And I think this is an area where they need to look at the model of CDF and see how this can also be utilized so that the youth can benefit. Currently, the youth are not really benefiting from the youth fund and the WESO Fund also. You find that it's a bit restrictive. I think we need to revisit it, and maybe when we give these functions are currently done by officers within the executive branch, but I think if it is given to committees to run them and we oversight them, then I think the youth may actually benefit in terms of getting more funds and also making them utilize those funds effectively. I know we also feel that the Act is not exactly entrenched in the Constitution. We have heard of this idea of if the PPI comes and proposes a ward fund, that the CDF should be phased out and we actually focus on youth ward fund. I think what we should really focus, Mr. Speaker, are the functions of the CDF. Mr. Speaker, sir, the CDF focuses on national functions. And these are education, which is actually primary, infrastructure for primary, infrastructure for secondary schools, security aspects. And these are things which are actually mandated for national government. I wonder how this can be captured if we actually phase out this particular fund and we create a youth fund, or create a ward fund, which is actually under the counties. Counties have their own funds. We give them their own budgets, they can actually create their own ward funds without interfering with our CDF. So I think it's an area whereby the members should be careful if there are any amendments to be done, in terms of the constitutional framework, we should not lose the CDF. And with those particular remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
The Honorable TJ Kajwang, member for Waraka.
Mr. Speaker,
the Honorable TJ, just before, and I'm sure this is on a light note, the member for Suba North. You have a gripe with the Honorable TJ representing the good people of Ruaraka.
Mr. Speaker, I have no problem with Honorable TJ, though I'd request him to sit, because that's procedural. But two members can't be upstanding procedurally. Mr. Speaker, it's just that I'd actually pressed my button for the next debate, but when you called Honorable TJ, I was given the chance instead. So I'm saying we originally both come from Suba North, but surely they can't confuse us, both from the names and even anatomy, really. We can't be confused.
The Honorable Member for Suba North, I think the system here seems to be biased towards the ladies today. And I think it's a precursor of good things to come, that probably in future we shall have more representation, and probably from Suba. But you've done a good job for the people of Suba, the Honorable Odhiambo. The Honorable TJ.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud that my cradle member of parliament, the member for Suba North, is in the house and is doing a splendid amount of work. I'm the only one who has dual citizenship in 2 constituencies, Mr. Speaker. And I think the member from Suba North does not need replacement at all. Mr. Speaker, I actually did not want to speak to CDF because I think CDF is the best thing that has happened. I hear people talking about, replacing it and so on. I know they are jokers because they will never ever get to there. If they did, the people will respond to them accordingly. I'm actually waiting to speak on the Senate amendment on the Statutory Instrument Act. I think I will be more useful there than I will be on CDF that I think members have said enough.
Thank you, TJ. But the Honorable Member for Gatanga still has something to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to support what TJ has said, but since I've risen, let me just make my contribution. Honorable Speaker, I also want to say that CDF is one of the best funds we have in this country. In fact, I've recommended, even for the national government, we adopt this model because it works very well. At least with CDF, you are sure as a businessman when you are executing a project, the funds are available, the project is alive. What only matters is your speed to execute the work. This is the opposite to what happens in the county government. You are not sure in the first place whether that project is there. When it comes to payment, you have to plead with people, starting with the junior people up to the governorship level. At least with CDF, you are sure. County, you are at the mercy of people. Honorable Speaker, I also want to say CDF in our constituency is the only visible fund. At least you're able to see schools, security projects, administrative offices projects. From the county, in my constituency, there is nothing to see. Honorable Speaker, to make CDF better, I would like to suggest as follows. We need to standardize drawings. It used to happen in the past at the Ministry of Public Works, where we have standard drawings for schools. security projects, offices for chiefs, assistant chiefs, DDCs, assistant county commissioners, so that when you come here and claim that you can undertake a class for 500,000, at least we have something to compare. On specification, the same. Even if you come from different places, at least we need to compare like with like. Because I've seen some of our members, at least through social media. Some of us are undertaking projects which are not maintenance-free. I've seen colleagues painting schools, especially exterior, which is not recommended, because when you paint schools, it means that parents will continue suffering. They can't afford to do that every year. This is something which we need to agree with the board, because there is no need of wasting public funds. On the reallocation of resources, Honorable Speaker, I want to say it's very lengthy. It takes a very long time. You submit it to the board, it takes more than 3 months. I think this one, Honorable Speaker, should be done online. There is no need of wasting members' time waiting for projects which are just no ordinary projects to be undertaken. Honorable Speaker, for youths, I want to recommend that we also increase their funds, because I come from a constituency where we have a lot of talent. We are known. In fact, we say our cash crop is not tea or coffee, it's music. We have produced the greatest stars from Central Province: John Demethiu, Peter Kegia, Timo Namboro, Kariukiwa Kiarota. There are many, I can't name all of them. And of course, these people are able to earn a lot of money through Viusasa, YouTube. So even for our youth, we don't have to go the old-fashioned way where we have to take our youth through polytechnics and other places. If they are talented in other areas, please let's support them. And I really want to thank the government, Honorable Speaker. The other day, they gave us 25 million to do a music studio and a film hub, which we are currently doing. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to say I was very impressed. We trained more than 100 young people, and they came for 5 days without any pay. So it means if you do the right things, our youth will also benefit. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support.
The member for Gatanga, I've heard you clearly say that you produce the best musicians in the country. I'm sure there is no doubt about that. I was just wondering whether this new one who has produced the Jerusalem is also from Gatanga, Jerusalem. It is from there. Very well. Honorable members, I think interest in this has went. I will therefore... Oh, the Honorable Member for Nyando, you have something to say? All right. I have an opportunity at it.
Yes, for reasons that the chair is aware of.
Honorable members, the member for Nyando doesn't have a card, but he has submitted his card for rectification. It had a problem, and that is why I have allowed him. But ordinarily, if you do not carry your card, you will not have a bite at the cherry.
And I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of this Special Funds Accounts Committee, and I want to congratulate my chair, Honorable Kathuri, the members of this committee who are my colleagues, for burning the midnight oil to come up with this report. Mr. Speaker, as has been enumerated by many of us, many people who would have otherwise dropped out of school and confined their lives into villages under shanties and deplorable state are now having a renewed hope that through bursary, which is an annexure of the NGCDF, are able to complete schooling, get jobs, and reorganize their lives. So the benefits that come with CDF cannot properly be underscored. Mr. Speaker, we also know that county governments do some miniature bursary disbursements. The problem is that it is shrouded in mystery and opaqueness that many a times you end up with people having double allocations, benefiting from both the county, because you never know the criteria that is followed, and at the same time, the NGCDF bursary. So some people are denied an opportunity, but others get double allocation because there is no harmony in this kind of transaction, Mr. Speaker. When we were re-examining the report from the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, we realized that the problems experienced, not just in Kiambu, but cutting across this nation, is lateness in submission of exonerating evidence. So you have an Auditor General finishing his or her work, presenting the report to the headquarters and submitting it here in Parliament, yet there are very critical and crucial documents that could have been presented before that audit committee, right from the ground. But it delays until this report comes to us. And then the national government
for everyone, for all the problems. I will call now upon the mover to reply.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I really want to thank the honorable members of this House who have given wonderful suggestions on the way this fund should be run. And Mr. Speaker, to be honest, my committee has really benefited from the contributions of the members. And in the future, we will be able actually to give more input into the suggestions that have been that have come across. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Office of the Speaker for giving us time to work even during this COVID time, even allowing us to travel to Mombasa in the next 1 week to tackle the coast region constituencies, which are almost 25. And Mr. Speaker, the issues raised by members, especially standardization, I can see many members are not comfortable with standardization. But what we meant in this is that if it is Mandera, for example, we want the buildings in Mandera to be standardized, especially in design, in structure, so that we can have quality. Because when we go to maybe Kakamega, we have designs for that region. Because the standardization is not meant to make sure that we spend 600,000 per classroom. No, it is to improve quality and the designs. Mr. Speaker, members have really their interest to increase the fund to 10%. Actually, that is the way we should go. And this BBI thing should actually compare what is working for Kenya. If NGCDF is working, if the engine is working, why should you fix it? Why should you waste a lot of time trying to fix things? And this fund is really working for us. As you put it, very honorable Speaker, let us have that comparative study to look at what has devolved functions, what have they achieved since 2010, what has NGCDF achieved, and then we see the best model to use for this country. And Mr. Speaker, as Honorable Chieng, before he left, let us also have social impact assessment for this fund. Let us hear Kenyans. Let us see people moving across the country to have a social impact assessment. And that should be tabled and adopted by this House, Mr. Speaker. Actually, the board should take up that and provide funds for the social impact assessment of NGCDF since its establishment. Mr. Speaker, this fund for us to be safe, as members have put it, it should be set as a constitutional fund, like the equalization fund, so that at any time, this fund is not under threat of any regime that will take up power. Because as it is now, somebody can wake up and say, in my budget, I don't want NGCDF to go, or my development budget from the national government to go through NGCDF. Let that 5 billion or that 6 billion go through the ministries, the parent ministries, and that policy can work. So, but if this fund is put and anchored under the Constitution of Kenya, then I think we will be safe. And as we pass many laws towards the BBI, this is one of the issues that honourable members should take up and demand that it should be included in the amendments that will come to this House, whether constitutional amendments or any other amendments. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much for the time and to thank the members, more than 25 members or thereabout, who have contributed to this report. And I want to assure this House that we shall move to all regions in this country and bring these reports to the current year, 2019 financial year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg to reply.
Honorable Murungi Kadhuri, member for South Imendi, and your committee, a job well done. Honorable members, I will direct that the next necessary steps on this particular motion be undertaken when the matter will be set down. Again, on the order paper, I direct that we move on to the next business.
Order number 11, the County Wards Equitable Development Bill, Senate Bill number 34 of 2018, second reading.
Mover.
Honorable Speaker, the Senate Bill number 34 of 2018 was published in Kenya Gazette Supplement number 138 of 8 November 2018 and subsequently tabled in the House for first reading on 6th of December 2018 and thereafter committed to the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget for consideration pursuant to Standing Orders 141 of the Senate Standing Orders. The bill was passed.
Honorable Hassan, you need to move. You need to use the word "I beg to move."
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the correction. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move Senate Bill 34 of Senate Bill number 34 of 2018 be now read as second reading. Second time. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of the National Assembly Standing Order 1433, the bill went through the first reading as stipulated in the Standing Orders of the National Assembly on Tuesday, 8 October 2019, and was committed to the Select Committee on National Government Constituency Development Fund for consideration and reporting to the House. Honorable Speaker, the bill seeks to promote further decentralization of development by creating a framework for identifying projects that are beneficial to the locals at the ward level. It also has modalities of resource allocation to the projects, implementation and oversight of the identified project. The bill is premised on Article 174 of the Constitution, which sets out the objects of devolution, among them being to give powers of self-governance to the people and enhance the participation of people in exercise of the powers of state and in making decisions affecting them. To promote social and economic development and the provision of to promote social and economic development, to ensure equitable sharing of national and local resources throughout Kenya. Honorable Speaker, Part 2 of the bill provides for the identification of ward-based projects for equitable development within the counties. Each county government is required to allocate its resources equitably across all the wards in the county, prioritizing the marginal areas within the county, and the County Executive Committee is to undertake the criteria for allocation of resources, and in doing so, ensure that the allocation is not less than 15% of the county government's allocation for development expenditure as provided for under Section 1072B of the Public Finance Management Act. The allocation criteria selected by the CEC must be presented to and approved by the County Assembly. The responsible CEC member is to ensure and coordinate public participation of the residents of the county in identifying development projects for implementation in their respective ward. This is to be done in collaboration with the respective village councils and ward administration. The County Executive Committee member, thereafter consolidates and submits the proposals received to the County Executive Committee for prioritization and determination of projects for implementation in each ward. Honorable Speaker, the CEC is to prioritize the wards determined by the Commission to marginalized or requiring special or urgent intervention. Clause 10 of the bill provides that the identified projects be included in a development plan provided for under Section 126 of the Public Finance Management Act, the county fiscal strategy paper, county budget estimates provided for under Section 13 of the Public Finance Management Act. Honorable Speaker, Part 3 of the bill speaks to implementation of the projects. Clause 12 provides further guidelines regarding funds allocated toward development. Honorable Speaker, Part 4 of the bill provides for the oversight and reporting requirements. Clause 3 precludes a county assembly from approving a county plan or budget that does not clearly indicate the manner in which the resources have been equitably distributed across the wards in the county. A CEC member is required to maintain accurate records with respect to the projects and submit to the county assembly quarterly reports which shall be scrutinized by the relevant committee of a county assembly. Clause 17 of the bill makes it an offense to misappropriate any funds or assets from the fund, while Clause 18 specifies the matters on which county governments may legislate on in relation to award development projects. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the above, the bill was subjected to public participation in accordance to the provisions of Article 118(1)(b) of the Constitution of Kenya and Standing Order 1273. The committee invited submissions from members of the public via advertisement on daily newspaper on 17th October 2019, and submission was only made by the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board. It's important to mention that the board submitted that the proposed bill would duplicate the County Government Act and Public Finance Management Act by re-legislating. There are sufficient provisions in both acts to deal with the issues that the bill is purporting to address. The committee was alive to the fact that, as a bill originating from the Senate conducted its own public participation. It is on this premise that the committee considered submissions from various organizations submitted to the Senate, which include A, International Budget Partnership, B, Commission of Revenue Allocation, C, Controller of Budget, Usingishu County Assembly, Mr. Dominic Mboya, Youth Representative, Homa Bay County, Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, County Assemblies Forum, National Treasury and Planning, Council of Governors. Honorable Speaker, the committee most importantly took note of National Treasury's submissions and observed that the objects that the bill proposes to address have been adequately covered by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, County Government Act 2012, and Public Finance Management Act 2012. The Constitution provides the guiding principles and framework of devolution and public finance. In addition, it provides for the equalization funds. C, Section 3 of the County Government Act provides for inter alia the same objects as enumerated in the bill. D, the PFM Act has a clear and elaborate framework for financing county government's budget execution, monitoring, and oversight. It is not clear what legal gap the bill is addressing outside the existing legal and regulatory framework. The bill negates on the fiscal powers of county government to plan, budget, spend, and report on the revenue allocated pursuant to Section 202 and 203 of the Constitution. Section 53A of the bill proposes to allocate not less than 15% of county government's allocation of development expenditure toward base projects. The Constitution contemplates that county governments should plan, budget, spend, and account for the revenue independently, consequently legislating a formula for sharing the revenue among subunits of counties as proposed by the bill means taking away the fiscal power of county government to determine the allocation of resources among the various county governments. Honorable Speaker, the committee therefore recommends that the County-wide Equitable Development Bill 2018 should not proceed with as it is unnecessary, since there are adequate existing laws on fiscal decentralization. The subsisting law has a clear and elaborate framework of financing county governments, budget execution, monitoring, and oversight. There is no legal gap that the bill is addressing outside the existing legal and regulatory framework. Mr. Speaker, with that, I request Honorable Kwenye Duku, member for Kinangop, to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to second this bill that as proposed and concur with
Just hold on. Just hold on. I am finding this interesting because the mover has informed the House that the recommendation of the committee is unanimous that the proposed bill should not be proceeded with, as it is unnecessary. And therefore, to second, what would the seconder be doing? Or the report? All right, proceed. Just hold on, the Honorable Tuku, just hold on. The Honorable Millie, what is out of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand guided, but my understanding is that what the committee is doing is actually rejecting and persuading the House to reject this bill. So in which case, Mr. Speaker, then it should actually be placed before us and then the House should make that decision.
Very well. The Honorable Millie, I think my mind is clear on that. The Honorable Tuku, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the position taken by the Committee on NCDF on the issue of this bill that was brought to this House, or that was presented to us by Senate, that was fronted by the Honorable Senator Kangata. And Mr. Speaker, I take every consideration of the report that emanated from the deliberations of CDF committee. And without saying much, I would wish to say that the people who have the primary duty of awards is the county assembly, because they are established by the constitution. And therefore, it would be their duty to really allocate money to the awards. And therefore, this matter should not have come to our deliberation, because they already have the monies in their coffers, in the county coffers. So it is for them now to allocate money as per the needs of the individual wards. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I second and support the committee's position. Thank you.
Honorable members, allow me then to propose the question that the County Ward Equitable Development Bill, Senate Bill number 34 of 2018, be now read a second time.
Speaker, since I've been given the mic, can I proceed?
Yes, the Honorable Member for Suba North, I believe, yes?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. And Mr. Speaker, very respectfully, I wish to disagree with the committee and wish to say that I actually support, but with amendments. Mr. Speaker, this committee has raised a very fundamental legal issue, and they are saying that there are legal frameworks that are actually providing for this bill. I had not looked at them. I'm actually going to look at them in depth, but from my understanding of those frameworks, first, the Constitution gives a very broad legal framework, and therefore, what actually then provides the detailed framework of implementation is a law. Is secondary legislation. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that is of concern to me, which may not necessarily relate to this bill, and I've raised it before this House, that I'm actually seeing things that come before the House that could easily be part of policy and not really legal amendments. And also seeing sometimes even 4 or 5 similar legal provisions or amendments that are coming before the House. And for me, it speaks to the fact that our legal departments could be overwhelmed. Maybe they are very few and our numbers have increased significantly. And we have not increased the numbers to help cope with the numbers that have come with a very brilliant House, where, especially if we are dealing with Parliament as a whole, not just as National Assembly. But one of the things that I'd want to say is, from what I've looked at this bill, what they are trying to do is to ensure equitable share of projects across the county. Because what happens in a lot of the counties is that once the governor gets the money, if you find a minority community, they might suffer. If you find areas that do not support a governor, they might also equally suffer because the funds that will go to them may be less. However, the only challenge I have with this bill is that it also makes provision that takes away the role of the executive, and their role is basically implementation. And I was hoping that this bill could try and mirror what is happening at the national level. So that even if we wanted to empower the MCAs, that then they have a fund which is similar to CDF, if that is the way we wanted to go. But otherwise, there needs to be a framework that states very clearly the way to divide and distribute resources across counties. The only challenge then is that even as the mover has those intentions, I don't see it very properly executed, because even when they are talking about communities ensuring that they come up with projects, they are not saying exactly how that is to be effected. So I'm seeing it actually very strong on ideology, but very thin on implementation, and that's why for me, I'm saying that I would actually want to support with amendments, and I am hoping, Mr. Speaker, sir, that by the time that it will be coming to the committee of the whole House, I will have had time to look at the other 2 County Governments Act and PFM Act, which also mainly talks about principles of equitable share, but does not go very at length on how this is done at county level. And Mr. Speaker, if then, I would want to reserve this comment that if then I find that what the committee is saying in relation to those pieces of legislation is true, then I will withdraw my support. But as of now, Mr. Speaker, I support, but with the proposed amendment based on this bill alone, without reading the other 2 pieces of legislation that are referred to. So I would want to encourage the committee. I don't know if they had the benefit of advice from the legal department, but I think if you have principle and implementation of the principle, then you need another piece of legislation to ensure that is done. So, Mr. Speaker, respectfully, I don't support the committee's position, and I support with amendments. Thank you.
All right. The Honorable Oundo Ojiambo.
Honorable Speaker, I stand here a bit confused or a bit disappointed in the way the bill has been drafted, discussed, and passed in the Senate and brought to this House for deliberation. I stand here in a way to support the recommendations of the committee in respect of this bill. Honorable Speaker, I truly believe parliamentary time should be used in the most useful manner that results in the best output. Honorable Speaker, I also do believe what is already legislated, there is really no need to re-legislate. Honorable Speaker, looking at this particular bill, it more or less looks like an executive summary, drawing various chapters, various sections of the law to come up with a bill that is not capable of being implemented, is not capable of achieving the desired results. Honorable Speaker, the County Government Act, the Public Finance Management Act, and the Supreme Law, the Constitution, literally sets out the functions and duties of account government, account governor, and the account assembly. What this law is purporting to do is to go into an exercise of repetition, repeating what's already provided for in the Account Government Act, repeating what's already provided for in the Constitution, repeating what's provided for under the PFM Act. This Act as it is, if we are ever to make amendments to align it to the Constitution, government policy, and PFM Act, Honorable Speaker, this Act or this bill will be rendered hopelessly useless. So, Honorable Speaker, for example, Section 5 of the County Government Act literally lays down the functions and duties of the county government. What this Act is purporting to do is just regurgitate, repeat, cut and paste what is already there and probably put it in a different language that really means the same thing. The County Assembly is seized with the power of making the budget, just like the National Assembly. There can never be any other way of making the budget without following the procedure laid down in the PFM Act and the County Government Act. If the County Assembly members of the County Assembly are unable to make budgets or unable to sway the executive in making the budget, they shouldn't actually look for a lazy way of getting their work done without following the law. The executive, that's the governor and the executive committee members, present a budget to the County Assembly. It is incumbent upon the MCS to realign the budget to meet the requirements of the people they represent. The county government is required by law to prepare a county integrated development plan. And that's a consultative process that starts public participation and on the ground. Why on earth would you want to have another law or another act that seems to thrash the recommendations of the people when they present their views under the county integrated development plan? Each year, the county government is required to prepare a county fiscal strategy paper that lays down the projects that are going to be done, the way of raising funds. Honorable Speaker, I truly believe the draft of the law just needed to find relevance where there is none. I truly believe probably was egged on by the MCS to try and copy the CDF. Yet the circumstances of the two are totally different. On that view, Honorable Speaker, I know my time is up. I stand to oppose and would make amendments that will literally negate and kill this bill. It's improper and is of no use to this country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well spoken, the Honorable Undo. I now call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Speaker, Honorable Speaker. As has been said by Honorable Ounda, he said it very well. Honorable Speaker, first of all, Honorable Midi Odhiambo, who just walked out, did say that she had queried, the legal minds that had looked at, this piece of legislation. And I will say that the able minds of the legal departments of Parliament have compared the existing laws and came up clearly that this is a copy-paste pieces of legislation that are uncalled for. I therefore, with the recommendations of the committee, I beg to reply and ask for the rejection and request the House not to allow this bill not to proceed. I beg to reply.
Very well. Honorable members, I instruct that the next necessary steps in regard to this business be undertaken when the matter will be set down again for consideration before the House. I therefore direct that we move on to the next business on the order paper.
Order number 12, the County Statutory Instruments Bill, Senate Bill number 21 of 2018, second reading.
The Honorable Maoka Maure.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I want to request for your indulgence that we do step down the business appearing on order number 12, 13, and 14, given that the movers aren't here to do the necessary.
Very well. Very well. I had received intimation in that regard. It is good that you have formally laid it down. I therefore direct that the business listed as order number 12, 13, and 14 be stepped down from the order paper for the day. Yes, the clerk will read them out so that we take the necessary action.
Order number 13, the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 24 of 2018, second reading.
I direct that the business listed as order number 13 be stepped down from the order paper for the day.
Order number 14, motion, special audit report on procurement of export verification of conformity to standard services for used motor vehicles, mobile equipment, and used spare parts by Kenya Bureau of Standards.
I further direct that the business listed as order number 14 be stepped down from the order paper for the day. Honorable members, that being the last business of the House, and the time being 6 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 22nd September 2020 at 2:30 p.m.